Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar, Breaking the Silo, Leveraging the Right Hotel Technologies to Create an Awesome Guest Experience, presented by Stay in Touch, Alice, and Sendine. I'm your host, Frigola, and I'm joined by my panel. First up is VP of Marketing and Sales at Stay in Touch, Karen O'Neill. Karen spent 15 years with Microsystems as a Vice President Hotel Sales and Strategies, where she worked closely with many of the leading global hotel chains, independent properties, and management companies on their technology strategy, system selection, and deployment. Karen defined the strategy, assisted in developing the global infrastructure, and sold more than 28,000 Opera system installations for hotels, resorts, and casinos in 180 countries on all 7 continents. In her last couple of years at Micros, Karen led the closing of several new clients based in North America, which today generate $100 million in year-end combined annual revenue. Joining us from Alice is Alex Shashu. Alexander is the co-founder of and president of Alice, the hospitality industry's operations platform, uniting back-of-house service optimization with front-of-house guest experience management and messaging. Alice's technology suite brings together the hotel front desk, concierge, housekeeping, and maintenance teams and connects hotel guests to their hotel with a mobile app and SMS. With Alice co-founders Justin Efron and Dmitry Koltunov, Mr. Shashu has taken the company through 3 rounds of funding, raising $13 million, and a built global client base in the hospitality and luxury residential sectors. And rounding out our panel is Sendine's Senior Vice President of Global Marketing, Michael J. Bennett. Michael oversees global marketing, sales development, and creative at Sendine. He has over 22 years of international management experience working with companies such as White Lodging, KSL, Knight Rider, The Nature Conservancy, and Eastman Kodak. His specialties lie in marketing, e-commerce, digital and mobile implementations, all with a proven track record of success. Michael focuses on managing with an emphasis on profitable growth through an increase in CLV, while constantly reiterating that creative marketing is only successful when held accountable to the results it produces. He currently sits on the National HSMAI Marketing Board, where he has been proactively involved for the past 8 years. All right, so we'll quickly run through the agenda and get started. We'll begin by discussing why hotels should harness cloud technology. Our panel will then address how to use mobile technology to better connect your front and back of house staff and simplify operations. The ROI and benefits of adopting a platform-connected model, and how to enhance guest relationships by smashing data silos. And finally, our panel will round out the discussion with 3 ways to identify the right tech solutions to maximize communication for your property. So let's get started, and before we get to the first discussion point, I'd like our audience to take part in 2 polls. And first being, I'm going to launch that now. When looking for tech solutions for your property, what is the most important thing you consider? And this is multiple choice, so feel free to choose more than one option. Service level of tech provider, ease of use, usability, features and functionality, integrations, or price. I'll give you guys about a minute, and then I'll launch the results. Let me launch that one again, actually. All right, so it seems that I actually launched it on accident. So if you don't mind, maybe you can go ahead and jot down your answers in the questions and comments box instead, so that we can get a count. Give you guys about another 35 seconds here. All right, so it seems that most people have chosen functionality and features, and ease of use as the two most important components when they are looking for tech solutions. So that is very good to know. We're going to move over to the next audience poll question. In your hotel, who generally makes the final decision on which tech platforms the hotel uses? Give you guys another 30 seconds before I launch the results. All right, I'm closing the poll now and sharing the results. In your hotel, who generally makes the final decision on which tech platforms the hotel uses? 57% say hotel owner, operator, 19% say IT team, another 19% say general manager, and 5% say other. Alrighty, so we are now going to move along to the first discussion point. Why hotels should harness cloud technology. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to our first presenter, Karen O'Neill, who's going to give her take first.
Thanks, Free. Great. Well, I think why hotels should harness cloud technology, it's a great topic to start off. I think it's also why the presenters are here today, the presenting companies are one of the reasons why we're here today. It's because we can simply integrate much easier in a cloud environment than we can in a perhaps traditional environment. It enhances the automated data exchange. It also can provide a cost reduction in numerous ways, from an on-site implementation versus remote implementation, from a costly hardware perspective even, interfaces, PCs are no longer required, and even in some cases, even the actual fees to connect the systems together. It can be a much more open platform for integration, and this integration becomes simply a handshake between those cloud vendors. Alex, do you want to share your thoughts?
Hey, sorry, I was on mute there.
That's okay.
Yeah, no, so I think to us when we look at this, we're not really sure what other option there is today. If you think about all the technologies out there and the fact that you need to have a holistic understanding of your entire experience and your operation, you know, cloud is the facility for that because it allows the different components of it to work together. You know, guests can do everything from their devices at home, and they're bringing those expectations to your hotel. And cloud now makes it possible for that expectation to be realized, for us to have the same service level we do at home in the hotel. And as a hotel as a service business, that's fundamentally important to managing your guest expectations and beating them.
All right, Michael, you want to give your take here?
Sure. You know, here at Sundyne, we really think about data consolidation, how it impacts the guest experience. So we're really trying to find that single point of truth. And, you know, in addition to security, redundancy, data consolidation, getting to that single point of truth really helps hotels identify their best guests. So you can create leverage and find more guests that looks like them. So, and then on top of that, it helps you keep your past and existing in-house guests more engaged with your hotel.
All right, thank you to my presenters for giving pretty much a quick overview of what this webinar is going to be about, and I'm going to pass it over to our first presenter for the first presentation on simplifying operations and streamlining the front and back of house and guest experience with mobile technology.
Great. Thanks again, Free. Okay, so I'm going to spend a few minutes just going through, again, as Free mentioned, how we can use mobile technology to simplify your operations by taking you through a few journeys, mobile journeys, if you will, on the operations side within a hotel, and also the guest journey and the benefits of really harnessing mobility. So from a, I think all of us can say that we see the trend that more and more hoteliers are moving away from perhaps having a traditional front desk. And I think that that's a common thread really throughout this, kind of my portion of this presentation. So as an example, as it relates to the general manager and or the sales and revenue management team, by harnessing mobility, you're really giving the opportunity to allow those resources the ability to untether themselves from their office, be able to check availability, rates, be more agile in their operations, be involved in the lobby potentially with greeting VIPs and recognizing those important guests that are coming in. From a housekeeping perspective, I think kind of about housekeeping as the dark night, if you will. One of the things that's so special about housekeeping is for so long, housekeeping departments have relied on pen and paper or clipboards or walkie-talkies. And I think, you may hear throughout the presentations today about how by harnessing mobility, you're really, again, allowing your housekeeping department the ability to be so much more agile in their decisions and so much more efficient. So updating room statuses on the fly, providing really a better level of service to your guests by ensuring that you're not doing that uncomfortable knock on the door as a housekeeping supervisor to try to get somebody out of the room because it's past checkout, because the system has opted to push to them a late checkout option that they've taken advantage of. So it's really putting the power at their fingertips and really providing them the ability to have that real-time information and ideally moving away from that traditional pen and paper that we've been relying on for so long. From a front desk perspective, gosh, of course, the front desk and the lobby, it's the heartbeat of the hotel. So much happens day in and day out at the front desk and in the lobby. And as this paradigm shift is happening where the front desks are evolving, and they may not be the traditional front desks that's been around, the lobby is still such a place of so much function and activity. So from a mobility perspective, again, similar to the room status updates and the housekeeping, so being more efficient in turning rooms faster, which is allowing you then to fill those rooms faster. Also upselling. Upselling is a great feature that there are many companies in the marketplace that offer upselling possibilities, including monetized early check-in and late checkout. We happen to be one of them, but there are many out there that offer that, and that front desk and or the lobby, you're able to continue to push that in that guest journey. Instant actions to those departments that are at play. So whether it be housekeeping, maintenance, you need to add an add-on to the room, you need a crib, you need an extra bed, potentially you want to push an add-on for a package, a food and beverage element, any of those things where you want to initiate an action, you're able to do that when you're harnessing mobility. And then lastly, the managing of guest expectations. I'm sure my friends at Sendine are going to talk a little bit about this as well. But from a guest perspective, obviously that's the #1 reason that we're all here, is to really embrace and ensure that our guests are receiving the level of service that they want and that they choose. And so improving the handling of those guest expectations, improving that if they are frustrated or irate, if they want to split, if they want to share, if they want to add somebody to their room, all of those functions, doing that a little bit more seamlessly. From a guest satisfaction perspective to that end, I think it's an important element to focus on the fact that, it makes sense. Customers are going to be much more likely to spend more if they're happier. So I can say that for myself. But basically for this, focusing on guest satisfaction is imperative, enabling a smooth check-in and check-out experience, ensuring that whether it be in your actual lobby, on a mobile device prior to check-in, you're giving the guest really that power of choice to tailor their experience around what their desire is. There's some various percentages out there, but many, somewhere in the neighborhood of, let's say, 70% of guests have suggested that they prefer when there is a mobile check-in option for business travelers. So I think, I can speak for myself, traveling a lot on the road, that, I like in some cases to have the choice to be able to go directly, bypassing the desk, and go directly to my room if I so can. And also that the actual hotel knows my preferences during my journey. And then from how mobile can help augment the guest experience. So again, this kind of goes hand in hand, right? So augmenting the guest experience through mobility. So there are a lot of different options here. There's line busting. There's making the process easier, i.e. less clicks for that guest to have to go through or stand through. There's allowing the guest to have some kind of, power, if you will, in the process. So ensuring that they feel comfortable that they're making the decision on which choice and how they would like to be serviced. That can allow the hotelier to then become a true host. It can make spending money easier. It can also enable you to be able to upsell more during that process. And of course, the engagement with the guest is also part of that, whether that be electronically or digitally via device or in person. And then finally, the impact on mobile on guest satisfaction. I think that this is a really interesting perspective. There are some people who could suggest that the focus on the traditional hotel star classifications is almost being overshadowed by websites like TripAdvisor and other sites where the guest has the power of choice to be able to really pick how they want to comment on their stay and on their experience. So this particular TripAdvisor is about, it's again tied back to exactly what we're talking about, how awesome it can be to check in via email before you arrive, how simple it can be. So this is something that we're seeing a lot, and I think the industry in general is seeing, and it kind of reiterates the fact that the power of choice is extremely important for guests, and goes hand in hand with embracing and harnessing the mobile solutions. Thanks, Reed.
All right, thank you so much for that, Karen. I think it goes a long way when hotels choose to make the choices to better streamline their back house experiences, and thus that's going to better the guest experience. And so thank you on that perspective, and we're going to move along to Alexandra, who's going to talk about a look at the ROI of properly integrated systems. Alex?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. That was fantastic, Karen. Thank you. When we look at the ROI, it's a question that every vendor is asked, what's the ROI? And to think about ROI, we first have to take a step back and look at what is a guest experience. Because at the end of the day, any positive expectation or positive service is ultimately trying to drive loyalty. And loyalty is driven by a better than expected guest experience. But the guest experience itself, if you look at the stages of a guest journey, and we've just mapped out one thinking, which is dream, select, book, prepare, stay, share, and return. These are separate stages that might happen over weeks and months. And then within the stages, you have all these jobs being done for the guest who's booking, for the guest who's on property. And ultimately, the result is one takeaway, whether the guest had a good or a bad experience. Hopefully a TripAdvisor review, but ultimately a takeaway by one guest. And so you're coordinating over all of these things. And so when you look at an integrated system, we first have to look at, well, what is the system they're going through? What is the journey everyone is going through? And how do you do that? And so if you go to the next slide, when we came into the industry, we saw a technology stack that was way too complex. If we focus on one piece of the journey, which is the in-stay piece, the piece we know best. Running a hotel itself is already complex enough. You have multiple departments. They all need to come together. They work differently nights and weekends than they do in the day. You have different shifts, different staff coming in and out, maybe sick one day, overstaffed another. And running a hotel is hard. My father ran 95 of them in the UK, and so I experienced that firsthand, working in them on the staff side. And the guest doesn't see any of that. The guest ultimately just sees the final result, right? And then you look at technology in our industry, and it's even more complicated. The current technology stack has 3 to 5 systems running one operation. You're spending thousands a month. And because most of these would exist before the cloud, they didn't speak to each other. So more importantly, not only are you spending all the money and setting it all up, but you're not getting the data, you're not getting the collaboration, you're not getting transparency into what is happening. Most of the GMs we work with never take a holiday, because if they do, they're not quite sure what's going to go wrong, right? And so if we go to the next slide, when we look at this, we're thinking, well, this is way too complicated, right? This image is an image we built with HT&G that is a tool set we built that allows a hotel to map out their current communication channels. And so this is one of our hotels from a year ago in New York that mapped out all the different communication channels they experience between departments. And as you'll see, it's a very complicated web, almost a subway system. And like a subway, you're not able to get off the train halfway through. You have to wait till it gets to the next stop. And so for the front desk alone, you're running 7 different ways of communicating, whether it's email, text message, a housekeeping system, a pager, pen and paper, in person. And so, when we think about ROI and we think about what is the value of integrating systems, well, it's to simplify this. It's to simplify it. And then you have to look at who else has simplified. So if we go to the next slide, the real approach here, what cloud really enables is the idea of becoming a platform-driven business. When you think from Amazon and retail to Uber and transportation to even Airbnb and hospitality, there are a variety of businesses that are coming up strong and they're embracing platform. But what is a platform? Well, a platform is a business model that uses technology to connect its people, its organizations, and all of its resources in an interactive ecosystem. And that's what a hotel is. It's connecting all of these various moving pieces to create that ecosystem. And the experience improvement or the value and efficiencies that these companies have created through approaching platform are huge, that they're quickly surpassing the established incumbents in their own industries. According to studies, you'll have 25% of the world's economy will be platform businesses and will be digital. And so when we talk about the cloud, what we're really talking about today are digital businesses. And one day soon, we'll remove the word digital completely. Every business will be run this way. So for the hotel industry, this new model offers both a competitive threat and an opportunity. How can we use technology to deliver services in a more convenient, faster, and more transparent way, the same way these platform technologies are? And so if we go to the next slide. First, what you have is all of these companies integrating their own services. So, what this has allowed us to do, and cloud and social and mobile has allowed us to create this global infrastructure that allows people to maintain their identity, and mobile allows you to move it, as was explained before me, right? And you have companies, if you walked around high tech this year or you're on calls with vendors, everyone is saying, we have a platform. We have a platform. So is everyone a platform? No. What they're doing is they're integrating their own services. If we move to the next slide, it's only when these different companies start working together that you really get that impact. Where you start seeing your guest app journey fit into your CRM journey, fit into your PMS journey, fit into your on-property experience. When all of that's synced, that's what we're talking about. That's what we're talking about when we're saying breaking the silo. And there's a big movement underway in our industry where people are opening up their APIs, as it was explained earlier, letting companies plug into each other. And so before the cloud, this was not as possible. It'd take a lot of time. Now, when you're choosing a partner, what that means is, let's say the next feature comes out, maybe it's voice. You don't need to remove your existing partner and put in a new one. And so if we go to the next slide, what that allows you to do is everything sits in one place. This is an example of a guest profile that's showing activity in sales, as well as valet's work, as well as any complaints they've made, what maintenance issues you're working with, what housekeeping is going on. And so from a single point of view, because you have this integrated environment, you're capturing the entire guest experience, not just one small piece of it. And if we finish in the next slide on what is that ROI of that? Well, for first and foremost, it's looking at the experience. At the end of the day, hotels are human experience. We're designing that. 89% of companies, if I throw out a few statistics, 89% of companies believe that customer experience will be their primary basis for competition by 2016. This is versus 36% only 4 years ago. 78% of millennials would rather pay for an experience than material goods. And 6 times are more likely to buy with positive emotional experience. 12% more likely to recommend. So what is the ROI and the benefits of having a fully integrated platform? It's that ability to personalize. It's that ability to understand what's happened before the guest is with you, whether they were with the marketing team, with the check-in team, and now that you're the housekeeper in the room, and to use that information to personalize their experience. It's that ability to improve your service in your service so that staff only have to look at one screen, and that communication is consistent. And actually, I pulled out a quote that I thought was quite nice by a director of IT at Belmont, right, who said the ROI is built into the fact that technology increases the service level to a point where you don't need to spend money on service recovery. Well, that's a very mathematical way of looking at it, and it is a nice one. But also, maybe we look at a new term, which is what is the return on experience? Is that guest likely to recommend you to a friend? Is that guest likely to return? Right? Is that guest likely to promote you on TripAdvisor or promote you in conversation? What is the return on all the work you've done? And then finally, it's simplification. It's cost savings because you've not only have you increased the communication, but also you're not spending as much on integration. You're not training staff on 5 different systems. You're not integrating 18 times. And so when you have this cohesive environment, you start realizing benefits that aren't just monetary, but that are emotional for the guest experience, as well as simplicity for the staff. Thank you.
Alex, thank you so much for that, and I thought that was really interesting. You brought it back to a return on the guest experience, which really speaks to why every investment should be geared to personalize the guest experience. And with that said, I'm going to move over to Michael J. Bennett, who's going to give us his presentation on enhancing guest relationships by smashing data silos. Michael?
Thanks, Bree. Next slide, please. So, there's always a lot of conversations about big data, and at the heart, Sundyne, is a data company. But we really have a premise that I wanted to share before I dive into some of our thinking around smashing these data silos. And the value of the big data is not the data itself. It's truly the action you take on it, the insight that positively impacts your business. So if we can jump to the next slide, I'll start detailing out that. So we really think about 3 steps to enhancing the guest relationships. We have the data, the action, and the insight. Next slide, please. So let's talk about the traveler life cycle. Alex hit on this a little bit, but there's sort of these key steps of planning, booking, pre-stay. They arrive, they do what they're going to do, and then how do you retain and create a loyal guest? Next slide, please. So, from a Sundyne perspective, what we're really looking at is all these pieces of data. So you have all these touch points within the life cycle, web and social and call center. You can kind of see around the circle there. All those are sort of disparate silos of data today. And what we really think about is how do we bring those into a singular data warehouse, a smart one that actually has some intelligence built behind it that creates this single version of truth, sort of that rich data profile around your guests. And then, these are just the first-party data sources. In addition, there's all the third-party data out there that are, credit card companies and groups like Axiom and Nielsen, et cetera, have that can be married into this. Next slide, please. So then we get to action, which we think about from a communication and automation standpoint. Next slide. So let's talk about marketing automation. So there's sentiment, pretty common sentiment out in the industry. Always want to deliver the right message, right time, right customer via the right channel. So when we think about collecting all that data centrally, and then then you can start to understand what's your most valuable guest look like. So then you can give them automated, targeted, personalized, relevant messaging across all of the different places they live. That could be email, mobile, social, display, etc. And typically this is pre-arrival or past guest. But more importantly than that, you have these most valuable prospects that sit down here at the bottom of this graphic, and using this data to create leverage. And I use that word quite a bit when I talk about this, because when you truly understand what your best guests look like, whether it's midweek, weekend, leisure group, doesn't matter, but when you know what that person looks like, you can leverage that data to go out and find more people that look just like them. So building true incrementality from the data that you have is possible today when you think about it in this format. Next slide. So I mentioned third-party data integration. This is an example, but there's truly millions of data points out there that you can append all this data to. So if I know that, you know, here's some demographic data, here's interest data, here's intent data, I can build these rich guest profiles on my existing guests, and like I said before, then I can go out and find people that look just like them. So, you know, in your hotel, you know, if you 30% of your business is group and 70% is leisure, and your group base is solid for the year, really understanding what your leisure guests look like and being able to not only talk to them, but also go out and find people that look just like them is super important as you try to fill the rest of that 70% of your business. Next slide. And then we have data automation, right? So we talked about the guests while they're in the booking funnel, perhaps right before they visit the hotel, and then after, as you try to, you know, retain and create a loyal guest. But you have all this data as well that you can use to improve guest satisfaction and profiles and preferences, and that can be delivered then, you know, from the same warehouse into the call center, a mobile app, concierge, to the front desk. You know, imagine, you know, at the front desk you're having a conversation with a guest. I can't tell you how many times, and we've all experienced this, and you walk into a hotel that you've stayed at 12 times and they ask you if it's the first time you stayed there, regardless if you're a loyalty member or not. So we're really focused on solutions that can help those operation agents, wherever they might be in the hotel, to understand and be able to engage with that customer and start to create a positive experience right at check-in, or maybe it's interaction with a housekeeper or it's call center. But we believe there's true value there by leveraging that data. So it's not just about marketing, it's also about improving those meaningful interactions with your guests on property. Next slide, please. So then we get into business intelligence and analytics. Next slide. So, you know, reporting automation. So, you know, we think about this, there's lots of data, lots of reporting out there. You know, everyone gets their star reports and all their different things, pace, et cetera, depending on your brand or not. And, but, you know, the way we look at that is we try to consolidate that data, and we look at, you know, how do we create dashboards that are meaningful to the end user. And that's different from, you know, GM's dashboard's different than a director of sales or a director of marketing or, you know, an operations manager or a front desk manager. So all that data, again, centralizing it and then bringing it forward and delivering it, could be delivered via email, could be delivered to a desktop, to a mobile device, but really important that it's delivered in a format and the right data to the right person. Next slide, please. So in closing, just from our perspective, kind of 3 takeaways. Really gathering your first-party data into that central data store to create that single point of truth. Can't reiterate how important, it's the most important asset that you have. That first-party data, no one else has, it's yours. And getting it centralized from all those disparate systems into one is one of the most important things you can do for your hotel. 2, leverage a CRM tool to create marketing and data automation. We talked about that. And really, you have to take in the total perspective. It's not just about driving marketing engagement online. It's that offline engagement as well, which obviously improves the guest engagement and hopefully your guest scores. And then 3, using your BI tools to make smarter decisions that drive more profitable business and satisfied guests. So it's one thing to go out and do all that hard work, but if you're not using that data to drive smarter decisions, could be at the revenue management level, could be at the group sales level, could be at the GM level, but nonetheless, understanding all that data about your guests should help you drive more profitable business at the end of the day. Thank you.
All right, Michael, thank you so much for that, and I thought you did a really good job of really making people understand the importance of smart data and to use that data to better connect with guests. With that said, I want to open the floor to our audience to send in their questions. So go ahead and send in those questions. We're going to get to our last discussion point and then turn it over to the audience questions. All right, our last discussion point is 3 ways to identify the right tech solutions to maximize technology benefits for your property. Karen, go ahead and let you go first.
Sure, thank you, Free. So I think, access is key. Choosing the right providers that offer both guest and staff-facing solutions, which will harness multiple mobile touch points and enabling your guests the power of choice I've been speaking of is, in my opinion, really the best way to identify the right tech solution and maximize that technology benefit for your property.
All right, Alex, last thoughts?
We put down prioritizing the user experience, which clearly was the result of the poll as well as features, but ultimately the technology is just technology. The differentiator is how you use it or how your team uses it, and if they don't love it, they're going to work around it. If it doesn't integrate well, it won't be easy to use, and again, your staff won't use it. If it's not configurable to their existing role, if it doesn't have the features they need, they won't use it. And so for us, it's really the user experience, both in the design and the architecture of the technology you're looking at.
All right, Michael, we'll round it out with you.
I think it sort of feels kind of obvious saying what I put down, but I can't emphasize the amount of research that you should do, and in particular asking the tough questions around connectivity and ensuring that it can connect to all your systems. And I'm not just talking about CRM because that's what we do, or our sales cloud, but talk to existing customers, ask where the pay points were. There's a lot of organizations out there pitching that they can connect to all these different systems, but make sure you get out there and actually can do it. You can get your data and get it in a central place and visualize it.
All right, thanks so much, guys. We're going to turn it over to the audience, and I've got a few questions here, a couple for each presenter. I'm going to start with you first, Karen. First question is, can you share some ideas on how you can handle mobile check-in reservation if you don't have their email address, like OTAs or Expedia?
Yeah, that's a great one. So there obviously is a rise on OTA reservations and Expedia-type reservations that come through that come without an email address. So the whole premise of mobile check-in and sending correspondence to them via email doesn't work so well with those type of reservations. So one of the things that we kind of promote and that we've seen great success is basically pushing mobile check-in also through the company's website or the hotel website. So creating almost a vanity URL on the website, which would allow the guest to go to the Hotel Direct, click on the button, and then send them through the same process that you would be pushing out to your guests where an email address was on file. The benefit of doing this is that not only are you offering mobile check-in back to the whole choice option, but then also you're enabling your guest agents to be able, in your reservation department, to be able to really gather that email address and also to have intelligence around perhaps things like their arrival time, preference information, and that really then is, again, putting that power at their fingertips.
All right, next question is for you, Alex. When you talk about platforms, does that mean buying every technology from one vendor or from multiple vendors?
It's a great question. I think that ultimately you can only be great at one thing, which means that to achieve what a hotel needs to achieve, which is almost like running an entire city, you need to be able to work with multiple different suppliers and partners in every facility of what you do. You just need to do it in a way that Michael talked about and Karen talked about, which is do it in a way that making sure that the partners you pick are compatible with each other. If you're going to go with a CRM, make sure all of the data is flowing into it, like Setline. If you're going to go with an operations tool, make sure it fits into your in-room technology and the other systems you have in place. And so, in short, no, you're going to have to leverage multiple parties, but you want to be strategic in how you think about which to choose.
All right, and this one's for you, Michael. What are the most important data sources, systems to integrate?
Well, I mean, they're all important. I think we had to choose one to start with. It would be your PMS or CRS. Again, arguably one of the most valuable assets a hotel has outside of its physical property is its data, and majority of that first-party customer data lives in CRS or PMS. So I would say that's probably the starting point is to get that, and then you would go into other ancillary systems from there.
Get back to you, Karen.
Okay.
How do costs compare from a traditional non-cloud system to cloud solution?
That's another good one. So it is a different model typically between a cloud and a traditional-based model, in that a cloud solution many times has a subscription type of approach, which can maybe take some getting used to. But the value is there. You're basically, in many cases, companies are bundling in and leveraging digital, so doing remote consultation and service approach versus having this traditional, very lengthy on-site time, which can help kind of streamline and be a more efficient deployment. Also, things like your integration costs and the ability to connect sometimes are minimized in the cloud model as opposed to a traditional model because perhaps the architecture is a little bit more open in that sense, as we've been kind of speaking through today. So it is different, but I think that there are savings to be had in a subscription type cloud model as opposed to a traditional licensing model.
All right, and last question is for you, Michael. How do you use the centralized data to improve guest satisfaction?
Well, there's a couple ways. I think one of the ways we think about that at Sendine is we have a product called Engage. So, we go through the heavy lifting of centralizing all this data from all these disparate systems, and while we use it from a marketing CRM perspective, we can deliver that same data to the desktop at a check-in terminal. So imagine if a front desk agent goes into Opera, whatever their system is, and looks up a reservation at the same time, a widget pops up on the side, and it gives them, sort of uses a little bit of AI and some systematic programming to say, hey, here's Michael's reservation. Oh, by the way, he stayed with us 15 times. He has a preference for eating in this restaurant, and by the way, we don't have a current email address on file. So then it prompts that front desk agent to ask some smart questions, and with simple clicks as they're engaging with the guest, it's collecting that data and then repurposing it to make smarter recommendations next time. So I think that's just one way that we're thinking about it, but I think it's just the beginning of where leveraging that data is going to go.
All right, with that said, I want to thank our presenters and our panel for joining us, giving us your insight, and I want to especially thank our audience for sticking with us the whole way through. You will have the full recording and a follow-up email within 24 hours, so look out for that, and have a good day.